Hello, it's Amelia here from Undercover Architect, and in this episode I'm going to be talking about two things: cost and time. They're a huge source of confusion, fear and challenges for homeowners, and I think that reality TV and online renovating and building has a lot to answer for in the mismanagement of expectations when it comes to cost and time. So let's dive in. Now, this episode is probably going to be a little bit chunkier than most because there's a lot I want to say, and I'm probably not going to cover everything I want to say, but this is the biggest difference I see between, and the most significant difference that I see between real life renovating and building and what we see on reality TV and online. Now, this episode is one that I do talk a lot about with UA community members and with my course members, because it is this consistent thing. But I saw that it was only going to cost me this much when I watched it on television, or they were able to do this for this amount of money. How's that even possible? Look at the quotes that I'm getting. Or why did it happen so much faster? And why were they able to be in their finished project so much faster on television or online than I am personally experiencing in my own project? It's this thing around cost and time and how it is handled in a reality television sense and in an online YouTube renovating and building sense is a really big source of confusion for homeowners who are tackling their own projects. And it's one of these areas that I think is responsible for a lot of the challenges that we have around the expectations when it comes to what it will cost to build or renovate and how long it will take for us. I do generally find that when homeowners turn up to me either via a course or via, when I work with them on their design, or even just speaking with them through the UA community, that, and this has been going on actually well beyond Undercover Architect. This is kind of standard par for the course with my career, and it's what my colleagues experience as well, is that homeowners will have a brief. So they'll have a list of the things that they want for their project, what they want to perhaps renovate or extend on their home or include in a new home. And then they'll have a budget of what they want to spend on it. And that budget is generally 50 to 75% of where it needs to be to match their brief. And there's this horrible readjustment that happens, and where that readjustment happens in your project is entirely dependent on the people that you work with. But there'll be this readjustment that occurs at some point when you realize that your expectations around cost do not match the realities of what you actually want to create in your project. And you either need to figure out how to adjust the expectations of what you want to get for your money, or find more money to get what you want. And so there's this real chicken and egg process that happens of, I don't know whether to dive in and invest energy and time and money in potentially creating this design solution that I can't afford to build, and I don't know what I actually want to create until I know what it's going to cost me. People get caught in that cycle for sometimes years. I see homeowners really stuck there, batting backwards and forwards these ideas about their project, not really knowing what it's going to cost, not knowing how to go about finding that out, and turning to reality TV programs and online renovating and building experts is the place that they generally do go to source information from. And I see them trusting the budgetary advice and the time advice that they're getting from these sources and being dramatically misled in terms of what real life renovating or building is actually like. This is heartbreaking. As a professional, this is heartbreaking. I know as a homeowner, this is heartbreaking. And it's why I find myself often struggling to watch some of these programs, because there's so much hidden information that is not being presented to the general public about what a project is actually physically costing or how much it's taking in time. And through the magic of television or online editing, it all looks like it happened very, very quickly and very inexpensively. And then we're expected to translate that experience to our own real life experience. And it only causes disappointment, and it also causes a lot of deception, I think. People, I find, will hang on to this idea, but it happened that way in what they saw. And they'll waste huge amounts of time and energy on being committed to the fact that it just can't be true what they're being told by industry professionals. It just can't be true what a builder is telling them, what an architect or a designer is telling them about what their project is really going to cost, because they saw it this way on television. And I see people waste huge amounts of time in that state of being really committed to the fact that there was a different outcome on television or that they saw online, and that they are going to unlock the hidden key that that enables them to be able to deliver their project for whatever that amount of money or time was. Now, notwithstanding, okay, I have had the great fortune of meeting so many homeowners, and I know I will never underestimate the savviness and strategy and ability of a clever, determined, motivated homeowner to nut out a solution that suits them, their budget, their need, and their site, and the wishes that they have for their home. I have seen homeowners manage to move heaven and earth to be able to deliver their project in a really clever and innovative way that really is about an investment of effort and education and information on their part to be able to get what they want for the, near to the amount of money that they wanted to spend on it. But that is not always, that's not a standard par for the course thing. Most people, what they're doing is they're arriving at the process of thinking about their renovation or building project. They've been planning it for some time. They've been researching, watching these programs, looking on Pinterest, following people online, looking at these hacks and these, behind the scene kind of tips and strategies and insider tips. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be able to apply this to my project, and it's just going to be able to happen seamlessly in the way that I work with people. And then they get this rude shock. And as I said, that rude shock can happen at different times of the project. You can find that you work with a designer who's very open, honest, and upfront with you and says, no, you cannot afford to build this for the money that you want to. Or you'll find that they unfortunately come across people who just tell them what they want to hear and get them committed into a process, and then it's only down the track that these people disclose that they can't actually build what they wanted to build for the money that they want to spend on it, and by that stage they've invested a fair amount of time and money in that process. So this is one of these things that I talk about a lot, and I really want to keep talking about, because this mismanagement of expectations doesn't seem to change. It is still this standard thing that happens, and when my approach always is, I want you to know as soon as possible, because then you can course correct. Then you can actually make the choices and decisions in the right direction for you, your project, and your budget, based on early information, rather than you going off and creating a design, investing in drawings, and just believing that it's all going to be okay and that you are going to be able to build it for the lower budget that you anticipated, and then somebody telling you the bad news, months and sometimes years down the track. I've seen homeowners sometimes invest 2 years of time, effort, and professional fees to find out that their project budget is half what it needs to be to deliver their project. So you being here is about this not happening to you. Unfortunately, though, I'm going to have to tell you some things that you may not want to hear at this point of having all these lovely dreams about your project, seeing it on reality TV, that it's all doable for these very low amounts of money, and thinking that you're going to be able to apply this to your project. So let's just unpack some of these things that we see on reality TV and on online building and renovating when it comes to how money gets spent on a project and how time gets spent on a project as well. So first, I want to talk about money. Now, the biggest thing I think is just understanding how a budget is structured when you're looking at these projects on reality TV or on online renovating and building. Oftentimes you're not seeing a whole project budget. You're not getting to see what the brand partnerships are that the specialist that you're seeing online, the expert that you're seeing online, or the whatever the program is, what brand partnerships have been entered into that give them access to special pricing, free products, lowered rates with tradespeople, all of those types of things that really help get that project across the line. I spoke with a builder recently who spoke about just how regularly construction and costs go up because of supply and trade prices going up. Material supply costs, all of those types of things keep moving on an annual basis. And for residential builders who are only doing a few projects a year, it's very difficult to lock in prices long term with these companies and not be subjected to the moving fluctuations of economy and of import costs and of supply costs and of transport costs and all of those things that feed into what it takes to physically get a building product into a supplier and then out to you on your site. And all of that gets left behind inside, the beautiful reality television programs or the online renovating space, because you just don't know what brand partnerships have been brokered and what is sitting in kind of the, for a supplier, what's sitting in their standard kind of profit bucket and what's sitting in their marketing budget, and what they're kind of writing off this experience of being involved in this program with the hope for exposure to a larger audience and being able to build their brand, how that's being factored in. And so, I even look at some of them, we've got a lot of American programs on television in Australia now with the HGTV, Fixer Upper, and all of the flipping shows of all sorts of different states and things like that through the USA. And you see these amounts that these renovation projects are happening for, and you don't know whether that includes labour, you don't know whether it includes all of the materials, it definitely doesn't necessarily include all of the staging of the home. There's all of these things that get left out of the conversation when budgets are being discussed on a reality TV or an online renovating and building program. The other thing that's worth considering too is that what this budget is actually paying for. So not only do you not necessarily know what's included in the budget in terms of what is being delivered at a discounted rate or a discounted trade rate or something like that, but you also don't know what work is physically being included in a budget that might be being named for a project. So I think of a program like The Block, for example, where they get given, a raft of money for so many rooms, and they sort of allocate that as contestants across different rooms, and you never know exactly how much of the work that is being done to make that room happen sits within the bucket of money that the contestant's being given versus sits within the building budget that the producers have created for actually making the building happen. A lot of the work that actually happens on The Block is a lot of refurbishment work, really. It gets presented as kind of big construction projects, but really you've got trades coming in that are just sheeting or tiling rooms, adding electrical for lighting, adding plumbing for fixtures. The rooms are generally always fixed in shape. They might be negotiating over a little bit of extra area here and there, or they might be doing a slight bit of replanning within the apartment space, but they're generally working within fairly fixed constraints. And so what a lot of the budget that you're seeing and the way that the budget is being spent is it's largely refurbishment. They're basically coming in and lining the space, they're adding the services fixtures, and then they're fitting it out with with finishes, with carpet and paint, and then soft furnishing in terms of, window coverings and furniture and artwork and those types of things. And so you will see this kind of budget get distributed across some of the trades and then being spent inside shops, and it's really very difficult to know how realistically that represents an actual renovation or building project. In my experience, a lot of people will look to, when they get their project budget, their project estimate back when they're renovating or building, they will look to the finishes and fixtures as a means of trying to pull back the overall cost. So they might get their first estimate and it might be, sort of $200,000 over or something like that. It might be a significant chunk of money over what they wanted to spend on their renovation or build. And what they'll target first is the tile selection or the lighting selection or, particular finishes that they might be putting into rooms and spaces. But it's worth considering, what was really impacting and what I know impacts the cost of a project is just the amount that you're actually doing, the physical size of what you're trying to build or renovate, the number of rooms that you're trying to include, the sizes and the spaces of those rooms. There's, the glazing. Sometimes glazing, all of the windows and doors, makes up a huge chunk of the budget. The structure, if you're having big open plan spaces and you're putting lots of steel work in, it's all the stuff that's hidden behind the walls. That will cost a large sum of money. There's all of the services infrastructure, running plumbing around. I often am surprised that people don't seem to balk at the fact that their plumbing expenses for their new home might be $20,000 or $30,000, but they really struggle with investing in the design of the home and sometimes investing less money in the design of the home. There's certain things that I see homeowners don't question when it comes to how much their project is costing to build or renovate, but then really trying to lower the spend on other areas, thinking that it's not going to have an impact. And I think there's this thing of perhaps it's because homeowners know you know, when you can see and you can touch and it's tangible, like the finishes, like the tile you're going to have on the wall, like the color you're going to choose, like the door handle you're going to pick. That's a visible, real kind of thing that you can touch and feel and compare, you know, a $200 item compared to a $100 item, and figure out if it's going to be worth the compromise to you. But in the grander scale of the project, in terms of what's going in behind the walls and the overall design and the way that the building gets put together, that perhaps feels a little bit more out of touch. And so your ability to impact the spend on that can feel a little bit more foreign to you, and you're ultimately trusting the people that you work with to make that happen. But I really encourage you to kind of recognize that what you're seeing in a reality TV and online space is not really reflective of the process that you will go through for your project, and how money is getting distributed and spent in your project is going to be very different to what you're seeing inside a reality TV program or in an online YouTube, you know, real life experience. I often have people telling me that they're going to do own a builder to try and save some money as well. This is another approach that people try in order to remove the builder completely or remove the builder's margin. Selecting materials and products and purchasing them yourself is another way that I see people trying to save some money. And again, it's about reducing or removing the builder's margin from those costs. All of this is seen as a way that we can eke out money and try and mirror some of the things that we see on television. We see these reality TV experts and online people going into shops, and they're choosing and paying for their own fixtures, and they're choosing and paying for their own finishes, and they're ordering all the tiles that are coming to site, or you know, they're figuring out all of the measurements, and they're making all of this happen. We see these reality TV experts coordinating all of their trades, and we see these online YouTubers, you know, calling the electrician and standing there with them, giving them instructions, and it all looks like it's quite doable. You know, it all looks like it's quite feasible. We can just find good people and we can work with them, and we can trust on their expertise to tell us what we don't know, and we can trust them to talk to each other, to coordinate their work so that there's no missing gaps and no overlays and nothing left out. And we can trust that they're going to know what they need to tell us and what they need to provide to us so that we get the completed project that we're paying for. Unfortunately, it is just not the case. What's often happening for these people that are working online or these reality TV is that they're particularly for the online people that I see, they have taken some time to pull together a team of trades, a team of recommended people. They might work with the same cabinet maker for all of their projects. They might work with the same electrician for all of their projects. Their tradespeople all know each other. They might have actually sourced other tradespeople via the tradespeople that they do know. And so they've created this team through a series of projects that they've worked on that do actually enable them to manage them well, because this team knows where the expertise gap is. This team of tradespeople and suppliers and installers and, you know, project people all know where these online experts, where their gaps of expertise are and what they might not be across in terms of project management. And so these experts can work together. They can also, that means that they've fostered this great open, you know, lines of communication where there's a very collaborative process happening, and there's an understanding of how people need to work with each other in order to deliver a project. You know, something even like a kitchen can have 5 or 6 different trades needing to work across the top of each other in an integrated way, coming in and out of the project at different times, that if you don't know how to coordinate that, if you've not done that before and you don't really know how to guide that process and you're relying on them to make that happen, and this is the first time, it's not going to happen just because it's just not going to happen. If you don't have anyone coordinating that work on your behalf, and they're what they'll do is they'll look to you to be the coordinator of it. All of those trades will look to you to be the coordinator of it. And what I've seen happen for people, I saw this in a Facebook group really recently actually, like a poor woman had gone about coordinating her own kitchen install, and the team had come in to install the range hood, and it had gone into the overhead cupboard over the cooktop, but the cabinet maker had not allowed for any space in the cabinetry for it to be ducted externally. There'd been, obviously, she had not known that she needed to specify this as part of delivering the project. The electrician installing the range hood had just installed what they'd seen, which they installed basically a range hood that was going to duct back in and recirculate into the room. The cabinet maker had not known what she was specifically wanting in terms of being able to duct this externally. And so she had this kind of like completely installed kitchen with no ability to externally duct this range hood, and the overhead cupboards now had no room to take it through to where it needed to go outside. Like total mess of coordination. That is the standard. That is what I standardly see when somebody who doesn't know how to coordinate a project is in charge. When you're relying on all of those trades to be the coordinators for you, and yet they don't know that, they're not aware of that's the role that they're performing, they're looking to you for that, or they're just not interested in it because they're not being paid enough to make that happen, or there's not enough incentive because they're not appearing on a television program, or there's not enough incentive because they're not going to have their branded t-shirts all over YouTube, then you're not going to necessarily get the outcome that you're seeking. And I think this is where I particularly see owner builders come completely unstuck. They'll say to me, I'm super organized, surely I can do this. And it's like, well, if you don't know what you're physically organizing, it's not going to matter how organized you are. I see homeowners, a builder, for example, will go around and check the plumber's work to make sure that things have been sealed properly, just as a matter of course, because the builder knows that ultimately the liability comes down to their contract. And if anything goes pear-shaped with the plumbing, yes, they can go back to the plumber, but they want to make sure that it's been done right the first time. If I've seen, and I've talked about this before on UA, an example of an owner builder who had a project done. They didn't check the plumbing. They had the whole place sheeted. They moved back into the home, ready to do sort of stage 2. And the plumbing exploded, and you had plasterboard being drenched, you had floorboards being drenched, and a whole heap of work that needed to be rectified. That yes, the plumber can come back and fix what they've done, but who pays for all of the other stuff to be fixed? You just don't see these things happening in the world of reality TV or online YouTube, online renovating and building people, because there's some accountability that happens when there's a camera on the situation. And so people, just by virtue of that, know that they need to, perhaps speak up and ask the question. Whereas in a standard project, I find that instead what happens is assumptions get made. And so people assume that that's being taken care of, and it falls into the gap of missing expertise or knowledge of people not coordinating the project properly. So this whole thing of yes, you can bring on a team, and yes, you can try and coordinate them, but what you are seeing when you look at these reality TV programs, what you're seeing when you look online on these on YouTube and those types of things, or on social media, is you're often finding you're watching teams of people who have worked together over several projects, are used to working with each other, are used to doing things a specific way because they've tried and tested it on previous projects, and they're used to achieving certain outcomes. And so there's a whole heap of communication bypassing that happens. There's a lot of budgetary stuff that just gets left out of the conversation as well, things that you're not aware that are being done for free, being done at low cost, not needing to be included. And there's a lot of stuff that isn't matching real life renovating and building. And so I'd really encourage you, it's great to look to these programs for ideas and for perhaps some strategies around, or just even an understanding of, okay, that's what it looks like to waterproof a bathroom, and that's what, they're running the tiling up to that height, I hadn't thought of doing that. But if you're actually looking to them to learn how to physically coordinate a project, or you're looking to them to learn how much your project is going to cost, they're not a good source of information in that regard. The other thing to understand is that when you enter a building contract on your renovation or building project, and I've talked a lot about the stages of construction in season 7 of the podcast, so I really encourage you, if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that. What you'll find though is that you don't necessarily see these stages playing out in an online or a TV project. particularly from a contestant point of view, because oftentimes they're not actually involved in a lot of that kind of bigger building work. They come in for the finishing stuff. They'll be doing that, perhaps they'll be visiting site and they'll be looking around at it, but they won't necessarily be explaining or be involved in what's actually happening in terms of the set out, digging of foundations, running of services infrastructure, getting specific set outs done, getting the surveyor in, getting certificates along the way. There's a lot of stuff that happens before the fit out and the finishing that you often see on these programs, because that's the stuff that's the exciting, kind of tangible, can be looked at quite quickly. And all of the stuff that actually takes you to get to that point, which is much more time intensive and cost intensive, gets kind of shown very, very quickly and not explained at a great level of detail. And yet, when you're building a project or renovating a project, that's the stuff that's time consuming. It can take a really long time to get to the point of internal linings. And yet you'll be spending a lot of money before you get to internal linings. So when you see your contract and you see these sort of stages of construction and these progress claims, you know, as a homeowner, and you start to actually pay out these monies stage by stage, what I see for homeowners is that they can feel like they're completely hemorrhaging money. Really large sums of money moving from either bank to builder or from homeowner to builder, and not actually seeing sort of, you're seeing your home take shape, but not necessarily in the way that you might be anticipating, because you were led to believe it looked a little bit different by what you sort of saw online or on TV. And when you're paying and investing so much money in that, I see homeowners actually kind of mentally check out of that process. I don't know if it's because it's so much money, it's overwhelming, or because it's basically, you know, if it's being paid directly from a bank to a builder, it's just amounts of money moving on a bank statement. And also perhaps because it's not something that they can necessarily relate to, because they can't, it's not like they can hold a concrete slab, or it's not like they can understand a set down or a footing or a truss, where in the same way that they can understand a tile and a paint color and a skirting board. So I see homeowners kind of check out of that process and not really stay involved, and just kind of get impatient that they're not seeing the stuff that they really want to see yet. What we talk about in stage 7, and particularly inside Manage Your Build, is like all of that bone work, all of that foundation and structural work is going to be a really big chunk of money, like kind of the largest chunk of money in your project. And it's going to be where you set up all of the finishes as well. And this is something that really doesn't get explained in the online and the reality TV space. It was interesting. I actually saw a couple of seasons ago when they were doing the block, and they were doing the 5 relocated houses that they added the extensions on the rear of, and then put the garage, the Fonzie flats, in the back lane, and them having a conversation about needing to lower the floor joists to accommodate the set down in the bathroom. It was the first time I'd seen that kind of conversation happen between the builder and the homeowner. And I think that this is actually, it's good, because you start to then realize, okay, that's something that obviously needs to actually happen and be accommodated in order for you to get the result that you want. But it's interesting, because where that really needs to happen is at a drawing stage, because your builder is going to price your project differently, whether your bathroom has a set down and they have to move all of those joists lower, versus just stepping up into the bathroom. That's a very different exercise of time and money, and a very different cost result. And so, if you don't understand this in your project, then that can be a really rude shock. Now, of course, it goes without saying that nobody is bailing you out budget-wise. This is one of the things with the block and with some online renovating and building experts, is they always magically are able to access extra money. And I'm yet to see a homeowner who can do that without a heck of a lot of stress, without having to, be able to source money perhaps from selling something, or borrowing extra, or having to borrow from family and friends to figure out how to pay it back later. Nobody's bailing you out budget-wise. And so the longer you delay the reality of what your cost of construction is and your cost of your project, the harsher that reality is going to be for you. So, I think that we kind of laugh about it. We kind of go, oh, isn't it amazing they just were able to win $10,000 extra to put into their bathroom? And we kind of know, again, that that really doesn't happen in real life. But what you don't ever get to see is then at the end, they say, okay, this is actually what we spent on making this building happen. This is what this overall cost was to us. This is what it would be in real terms. And I reckon you'll find if they actually broke it down into real market terms, it would be very similar. Like, unfortunately, construction costs what construction costs, and I don't see a lot of the variations don't necessarily come from any kind of, you know, magic unlocking of finding a cheaper result or outcome. Often when you choose the lowest quote, it ends up costing you more anyway because of mistakes and errors and dramas. But it would be really interesting for them to go, okay, this is really what this would have cost in the real world. This is what we were able to save based on our brand agreements, based on, you know, all of the things that we were negotiating as part of this. And you know, there's things like I see budget savings being able to that be targeted because they've reused materials. So, you know, I saw something recently where somebody was saying, oh, I sourced this fantastic, you know, window secondhand, and I was so excited at the saving. You know, this is something that you can really do. Sourcing secondhand building materials and sourcing secondhand windows for your project can be a great way to save money, and it can. But you can also find some builders don't want to do it at all. They don't want to work with secondhand materials. Some builders also, the money that you save in the product that you buy ends up being counteracted by the additional labour that it costs to install a secondhand building material because of the work that's got to go into working with something that might not be true to shape, or, you know, needs to be custom sized, all those types of things. So, you know, there's lots of these strategies that I see get thrown in as budget saving ideas and advice as part of these reality TV and online experts that I see when homeowners take these to the market, to residential builders, get real pushback on. And unfortunately, and then that, you know, it's kind of like, well, that, you know, surely this is possible because such and such did it. And it's like, well, no, they've created a team who are happy to work that way, and not everybody's happy to work that way. So if you're planning on implementing any of these strategies, having these conversations early and upfront is really critical so that you do find a team that's fit for your means and ways that you're trying to achieve budget savings. Now, I could keep talking about this for a really long time. I have season 3 of the podcast is all about spending and saving your budget. So if you haven't listened to that, I take you through in a lot of detail about real life renovating and building and how to really save money and make good investment choices when it comes to your budget. And of course, it's something that I teach explicitly inside my online programs. But I really just want to encourage you to not put your head in the sand about your budget, and not to think that just because you've seen it happen on TV or these online experts, that's going to be doable for you at these ridiculously low rates. It's such a horrible readjustment that homeowners go through. It always is very harsh for people. I see people I've recently seen a homeowner just in utter disbelief that their project is going to cost that much money, and because they feel like they're not getting anything for the investment that they're making. And unfortunately, we have been led to believe that building and renovating should be much cheaper than it actually is in reality. And you know, at the end of the day, trades are paid well in Australia. They have a short lifespan in terms of their career, so that changes the way that things cost. Construction material, the costs of those keep going up. We have tax systems, import costs, like trade costs, petrol costs. There's so many layers of things, because what you're ultimately doing is physically building something out of bricks and sticks on a site somewhere that's located and needs everybody to get to it. And so there's all of these layers of costs. And then that conversation leaves out all of the costs that go into the professionals that you need in order to make it happen, to design it, to draw it, to help you get approvals on it, to do the structural engineering and any other consultant advice, to give you your certification, you know, all of those types of things. There's all of these pre-costs that happen. They don't get talked about very much at all in reality TV or online building and renovating conversations. And so, you know, your construction budget and cost is only going to be one part of the puzzle of your overall cost. And then of course it's the fitting out and the finishing. The fitting out and the finishing always looks like a beautiful exercise of running into shops and picking $300 cushions, when in reality that's not what it's like. It's often that homeowners are really stretching themselves to actually fit out their projects because they've wanted to spend as much money as they could on the realisation of the spaces and the home itself. And so there's this whole kind of cocktail of mismanaged expectations and misinformation that I think comes through reality TV and online building and renovating, that you really need to just hold at arm's length, okay? When you're thinking about your own project, hold that at arm's length and take advice from the people who are actually in the industry, working with first-time homeowners doing this every single day, because the exercise of being a first-time homeowner doing this, when I say first-time homeowner, I mean first-time renovator or builder doing this for your own home, is a very different exercise to being somebody who's done this project after project, has a profile and a brand that is getting them all sorts of leverage with the people that they work with, and then they're telling you what that costs, and it's not a real life reflection of what you're going to be experiencing. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk about was time, and I just want to quickly touch on it here in terms of a mindset, because there's something that I see happens in terms of that, just the stress levels for homeowners and the reality of real life building and renovating compared to what they see online or on reality TV. The time factor is something as I said, I will talk about in future episodes as we move through the season, because the time thing is something that there's a lot of confusion and mismanaged expectations around as well. But I want to point out to you that this most likely will not be your full-time job, okay? Some people do dedicate a lot of energy and time to their project, that they sort of sink their teeth into it and they become kind of their project's project manager, and they do treat it like a project. And often that can get the best results, because if you can really sink yourself into it, be able to be fully involved in every step of the way and be that person who's making sure that everybody is literally kind of staying on task, then that can be an incredible way to move your project forward productively. But most people that I see who are tackling a renovation or building project, they're juggling a family, they might be juggling children and the demands of children, they're juggling potentially a job, they might be caring for other family, extended family, and and they're not necessarily living at or near the project either, and so they're commuting every time that they need to go to the project. This can be incredibly different to what we see in real life renovating and building. There's a whole difference of approach and of mindset that can happen when you know that this is the only thing you have to dedicate attention, effort, and focus on. If you're trying to juggle it with all of the other things going on in your very busy life, and you're trying to kind of squeeze it in the edges of, everything else that you've got going on and that's filling your brain, it's just going to feel very different, okay? What I see is that when I watch these reality TV programs or these online experts, and they can literally dedicate their attention and focus on this project, it means that they can just basically move out anything else that's cluttering those decisions and that time. And it's a very different approach. It's like a job then, and it's literally able to be their driving motivation for how they spend their time and their effort and their energy, and really be able to keep things moving. And if you're only having to focus on one thing, then that you can give that a lot of energy. It means that it's nowhere near as overwhelming. Decisions don't seem to come as fast and as thick and as sort of frantically. You can be a lot calmer and proactive about the way that you go about things. You can be staying ahead of the curve in terms of all the things that you have to be doing. And you can actually think clearly about it all. That can be very different experience to somebody who's trying to do this in amongst their already very busy life, having clarity, clearness of thought, having time, having headspace. Oftentimes people what they're doing is they're getting through their day, and then it's like 9 o'clock at night, they're sitting with their partner and going, okay, so we have to decide on a tile, or we're going to have to go on Saturday and stand in a tile showroom with the kids in tow to figure out what we're going to have in our bathrooms. All of these things, it's an entirely different experience. So if you're going into your project expecting that you're going to be able to dedicate that attention and that focus that you're seeing happen in these online and reality TV spaces, that you think you're going to be able to do that as well, unless you have cleared space in your life for this project to happen, unless you've kind of really made room for this project. And I encourage you to do that anyway, because it is going to be time consuming. It is going to take energy and focus and attention, and it's going to need it over the long term, because your project is going to take a long time. So like clearing room, making space for it is definitely necessary. Chances are that's not going to be your full-time job. So don't expect that it's going to look like the same process for somebody who is making it their full-time job. And I think that especially when you're operating outside of your comfort zone and you're doing something for the first time and it's not your full-time job, it's just going to, by virtue of that, feel more stressful. It's going to feel more overwhelming. And so you really need to put some scaffolding in place around you. And again, I've talked about bringing those decisions forward as much as possible, not delaying them, trying to be proactive and methodical, really approaching things calmly and in a productive way. It's going to serve you much better than you just thinking, oh, look, they were able to do it like this, and all I'm going to need is, I've had people say to me, oh, I'm just going to dedicate 1 day a week to this project. That's going to be my house day. And it's like, well, what happens if the builder calls you and it's not on a house day? Like, what are you going to do then? So really understand the difference of the reality of what you're going to be experiencing versus what you see. You're not going to be sleeping on site. You're not going to be in that, you might be in the house next door. I've seen homeowners do that. They've literally rented the house next door so they can be on site every day. And they felt that that was necessary. When that's not necessary is when you have brought forward your decisions, you've made all of your decisions up front, you've got a lot of stuff drawn, so you're not actually telling a builder what you want it to look like on site. You're not making those decisions on site on the fly, and you've got the right team around you who are managing you through that decision making so that it's not all getting left to the last minute. Okay, so this episode's been a bit longer, but that budget thing, and there's, like I said, there is so much more that I can talk to you about, and I'm going to be talking more about trades and how trades generally work on projects, how different that is to the real life experience, how time and the expense of time can be different in a real life experience versus a reality TV or an online experience. There's more to come in that conversation, but please, if I can leave you with anything, it's that get that budget readjustment, the real life experience of building and renovating and what it costs, get that readjustment happening as early as possible in your project. Try not to fall for the person who is telling you what you want to hear. If you have had 7 people tell you that you're not dedicating enough money to what you want, and you find the one person who tells you that, yep, they can figure it out for you, chances are you're going to meet disappointment a fair way down the track, okay? I see this happen for homeowners time and time again. They forget all of the conversations that they've had, the ways that they've changed their mind as they've gone through those conversations, taken on bits and pieces of advice, and then they find the person who tells them what they want to hear, and they feel like all of those old conversations apply to this one conversation, and they forget that there were twists and changes and pivots and all this kind of stuff. It can become like this big kind of melting pot of a lot of information. So really getting that budget conversation happening up front and early, and being honest with yourself when you hear the advice that might be disappointing at first, but can actually enable you to course correct really quickly, pivot and move in the right direction. And it's not going to be like reality TV. It's not going to be like what you see online. You just don't know what that money is being spent on in those projects, what they're getting for free or what they're getting heavily discounted, and what those budgets are actually including compared to your project. Okay, so I hope that that's been helpful. And I'm really grateful for the feedback that you're sending in about this season. This is, as I said very early on, this is information that is nerve-wracking to talk about, because it can feel a bit dream killing. It can feel a bit rude and harsh, and at the end of the day, creating a beautiful new home or renovation is a dream come true. It's a beautiful and incredible opportunity that we have. My feeling always is that I don't want you to waste any time. I don't want you to waste any time falling in love with an unrealizable dream, an unrealistic dream. I want you to fall in love with the dream that is actually doable. And for me, what I'm always telling homeowners is this isn't about killing your dream. This is about creating a new dream together, an achievable dream that will still deliver a beautiful lifestyle, a beautiful home, and may just look a little bit different to what you were initially planning, but will actually set you up for a life that is relaxing and that is comfortable and is a home that is great and functional, because you've not stretched yourself and, stressed yourself out completely in the process of delivering it, okay? And you've been realistic and had the right kind of support and information and knowledge along the way. I want you to be excited and empowered about your new home. That doesn't mean that you won't experience nerves and stress along the way, but you as the homeowner, you hold the key to unlocking what is possible for your future family home, and I want you to be in the best position possible to be who you need to be to make that happen. Thank you so much for joining me and for tuning in and for letting me be your secret ally. Until next time, bye. This episode and this season is brought to you by my online program, Manage Your Build. It's been so fantastic to see people joining Manage Your Build as part of hearing this season of the podcast. This course is one that I created with builder Dwayne Pearce of D Pearce Constructions. Together we have over 45 years industry experience in residential design, building and renovation. And this course is really about you understanding what is going to happen during the construction phase of your project. Trust me, it is very little like what you see on television. There are things that you have to know, things that you have to do, legal things that you have to sign on to, and knowing what those are before you dive into it, before you commit to it legally and financially, will put you in such a better position to be able to handle it confidently and to feel in control of your project. In this course, we take you through step by step what you need to know, who's going to be on site, the kinds of things that you're going to be seeing happening, and how to know that you're getting what you're paying for when it comes to the construction of your new home or renovation. If you want to find out more about Manage Your Build, what's involved and what it will teach you, head to www.manageyourbuild.com.au for more information.